Hi, this is Jason from Horrific Nightmares, back to do another episode of What's in the Bag, Jay. Now, this is the series where I take 6 movies from my collection that I have yet to see. I write their names on a piece of paper, throw them in the bag, draw one at random, watch it, and do a short review for you. Now, if the one that you really wanted me to watch and review didn't make it, you vote for it. 3 or more votes gets it put back in the drawing for next week. Now, with that being said, returning this week is Count Dracula with 3 votes, and Private Parts, once again, with 5 votes, I believe. It's either 5 or 6. Now, the other movies that are coming from my collection this week are Wrestle Massacre. Now, this came from a short on Frames of Fear that I actually reviewed on Halloween, I believe, for my 31 Days of Horror. They made it into a feature film, and I got it, and it looks really fun. The second movie is The Seamstress with Lance Henriksen. Not really sure what to expect from that. Of course, we have Count Dracula and Private Parts. We have The Slaughter, which I don't really know much about, but it looked cool, so I threw it in there. And last but certainly not least is Mimesis, Night of the Living Dead. Now, you guys know what happens now. I take the papers, I throw them in the bag. There's Private Parts, Count Dracula, sorry for the shaky cam, guys, The Seamstress, and Wrestle Massacre. And I give the bag a good tussle. Now, while I'm doing this, I actually had to make a new bag because the other bag was too big and too tall, and I really had trouble getting my hand in it, so like I said, this is a learning experience for me. So now I'm going to stick my hand in the bag and pick a winner. And the winner is... Ha! Count Dracula. So those of you who voted for Count Dracula, I'm going to be watching this and doing a short review. Now when you guys comment on the video, don't forget to vote for your favorite, rather. And I'll be back shortly with a review later. I'm back. I just watched Count Dracula, and here are my thoughts. Before I get into a overall rating and everything, Count Dracula is a 1970 film which runs approximately 98 minutes and is directed by the late, great Jess Franco. Now, Jess Franco passed away on April the 2nd of 2013 at the age of 82, and he did a lot. He had about 204 credits to his directing credit on IMDb, and here's a few of them. Bloody Moon, which is a favorite of mine. Jack the Ripper, which I also like, and also has Klaus Kinski in it. Vampire Lesbos, which I know is a favorite of Darren, Lisa's husband. Let's see. The Blood of Fu Manchu, which I do believe has Christopher Lee in it. And The Bloody Judge, which I have seen, and I remember enjoying it, I'm pretty sure. But anyway, this stars Christopher Lee, who unfortunately also passed away on June the 2nd of 2015 at the age of 93. Now, my favorite role of him is probably The Wicker Man. Love that movie, the original, of course. He was also in The Lord of the Rings, which is also among some of my favorite films. And Star Wars. Of course, he played Count Dooku, which is another one of my favorite films. This also has Klaus Kinski as Renfield. Klaus Kinski is a trip. He unfortunately passed away on November 23rd of 1991 at the age of 65. Now, I will recommend a Scream Factory release that Klaus Kinski was in called Crawl Space. And I love the movie. The movie's great. But it also has like a documentary that the director goes. He kind of says what it's like to work with Klaus Kinski, and it's very interesting, also very funny. Apparently, he was a character. He was pretty hard to work with. But he was in Crawl Space, Laser Blast, and oddly enough, I believe it's 1978 or 1979. He ended up playing Nosferatu in the remake of yeah, Nosferatu. Yeah. And we also have Herbert Lom, who plays Van Helsing, who also unfortunately passed away on September 7th of 2012 at the age of 95. He was in The Dead Zone, Amicus Film Asylum, and also Murders in the Rue Morgue, which is actually a really good film. Now, this is going to sound a bit negative. Before I get into negativity, and it's not really negative, it's just kind of matter of fact. I did like this movie. I'm going to give it a 7.5. I really enjoyed the acting. I enjoyed the direction. I enjoyed a lot of the camera shots. I enjoyed the set pieces. I thought all were really fantastic. Now here's where it gets into kind of it's not negative. Like I said, it's just matter of fact, just my opinion. I have seen this so many times, the story of Dracula. I'm not going to get into it. If you don't know the story of Dracula, you're probably not watching the right channel. Like I said, this is probably not the channel for you. Dracula has been told so many times. My favorite Dracula is probably Bela Lugosi, although Christopher Lee comes in as a quick second. But in my opinion, this film didn't really add anything to the lore. It was billed as being the most faithful to the original book, and I'm going to be honest, it has been years since I read Bram Stoker's Dracula. But I don't want to say I'm bored. I've heard the storytelling a million times. I thought the acting was brilliant. I thought Klaus Kinski was perfect as Renfield. Christopher Lee was great as Count Dracula, of course. I mean, you have all the Hammer films that he did. And Herbert Lom was really good as Van Helsing. But here's the thing. I don't think it really added much to the story. Yes, I like the set pieces. The atmosphere was really cool. But I've just seen the story so many times. I like what Hammer did when they kind of expanded on the character and kind of took it other places. Which is one of the things I'm going to say about the 90s version of Dracula, the one with Gary Oldman. It really took Dracula into a new area for me, and that's why it's why it's always been one of my favorites. As well as Shadow of the Vampire, which is kind of from the perspective of the film crew making the original Nosferatu, which is kind of a comedy as well, but it just takes it into a new area. I don't want to say the story of Dracula is tired, but I've just seen it so many times. So that shouldn't reflect on the film itself. The film is very well done. Now, this is, of course, the Severin title. This is a 2-disc set. This is also on Blu-ray, of course. This also has another film in it. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the name, but it is Pierre Portobella's expressionistic behind-the-scenes feature film. And it's black and white in 75 minutes, and it was made a year after Count Dracula. So I'm definitely going to give that a watch. Like I said, I don't mean this to sound negative. I did like this film. I did. Maybe I just wasn't in the mood for another retelling of Dracula, because I've seen so many. I mean, you have Dan Curtis's Dracula, you have the Dracula with Frank Langella, Gary Oldman, Christopher Lee, Bela Lugosi. I mean, Definitely more Draculas than you can shake a stick at. And then you also have Nosferatu, which was, of course, based on Bram Stoker's Dracula as well. So, I did like the film. Like I said, I believe I said 7.5. I'm going to stick with that. Um, yeah, I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad I own it. And Christopher Lee, once again, was great as Dracula. So, definitely check this out if this is something you're interested in. This is a lot tamer of a Jess Franco movie, and those of you who watch Jess Franco know exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, he can get kind of sleazy. I'll just put it that way. So, but definitely check this one out. It is a better movie than the review that I gave it. And if you like what you see in here, hit that like button and subscribe. And don't forget to vote for what you want in next week's drawing. That is very important because films can make a comeback, and law of averages says it works, and Dracula is proof of that. So until next time, guys, peace.